Hi everyone, it is Misty, aka Frankenbelly, and this video is my 4-year out. Today is the anniversary of my reverse, which I had 4 years ago. To me, it's a very humbling and very special day. I don't celebrate like, a lot of people will celebrate their surgeries when they actually had the gastric bypass. But for me, this day is more important because this is the actual day that saved my life. So people that know me and know my story, you can look back on my videos. I had gastric bypass in 2006, and then in about 2010 I started having complications, anemia, hernia repairs, bowel obstructions, things like that. And then 2013 I started getting really sick. I was almost about probably a little over 6 years out, and I started dumping off of everything I ate. Dumping syndrome meaning dumping off vegetables and protein. So not bad things that they don't recommend. And then it would follow up with reactive hypoglycemia or postperiodontal hypoglycemia. There's a couple of different names for it. So this got worse and worse. I pretty much was passing out and having to live in my bedroom because I couldn't function. I couldn't drive anymore. I was in and out of the hospitals. Nobody knew how to help me. Doctors were, I was seen on base. So for me, I lived far away from my bariatric, so I hadn't seen him in years, and they just didn't know what to do. They had a bariatric unit, but they refused to reverse me because they thought the risk was so high. So where have I been in this last year? So let's do a follow-up. Okay, so the last video I made, I was deciding, I was in California at the time, still living and deciding on getting feeding tubes put in. My feeding tubes were going to be put in, one in my intestine, one in my stomach, in order to see if it would help relieve symptoms. I have gastroparesis, which initially was caused by the reverse. It's not really that uncommon because I was, 7 years out. Plus, I had had several stomach surgeries, so they cut my vagus nerve several times, which is what caused the gastroparesis. And then my bariatric hypoglycemia came back about a year later after the reverse. Some people's goes away, some people's don't. Mine happened to come back, but I will tell you this, mine is much more manageable, much more controllable. Before the reverse, I couldn't control it. Now I still have lows, and I always stay on the low side, mainly 70 range, maybe 80 range, getting down in the 60s and 50s when I'm really low. But I can now control it for the most part through diet. So I still live on a low carb, sugar-free, high protein, healthy fat diet, and it pretty much controls it. There's not medications really out there for this condition. I have went through and tried them all, and it didn't keep my levels up. So it's just being cautious, watching. I have a Dexcom, which is like a CGM, this little thing right here, and it runs and it tells me. So this helps me know what my blood sugars are if I'm going to crash. I also have a medical safety little kind of like an EpiPen, but different for sugar, that stays in my purse that I need if it was to get severe. Okay, so this last year has been really rocky because I was looking at getting feeding tubes put in, and Stanford took so long that by the time they wanted to do my feeding tubes, it was January timeframe. Well, the issue was I was having all kinds of female issues and was going to get a hysterectomy because I was having extreme amounts of bleeding, and biopsies kept coming back bad and things like that. So what it came down to is Stanford kind of gave me an ultimate. They're like, either you get the tubes put in or you push the hysterectomy back. So my issue was the hysterectomy had already gotten pushed back into February. So they wanted 3 months in between the surgeries for time for me to adjust and heal and things like that. Well, we were PCSing, we were moving in June to Delaware. Being a military family, I kind of had to do what I had to do, and since I could still physically eat, my gut was telling me, you need to do this hysterectomy. Lo and behold, a week after my surgery, it came back that I had on my cervix, I had stage 2 cervical cancer. So I made the right decision. But unfortunately, that pushed me back. So I wasn't able to get back into Stanford before I left. So then we traveled. So that brings us to June. Traveling was really hard. Probably the hardest hardest, sickest I've been in a long time. It really set me back. We got here at the end of June, July. We were kind of hopping around from hotel to hotel, just eating, wherever. I stuck to my diet. So I was still eating meats, eggs, sugar-free, but the food just tore me up. I couldn't get on a regimen, and it threw my sugars out of whack, and it probably took me a good 2 months to finally get back into the system of, not feeling so bad. The stress got a little bit easier. I really, really have noticed how stress can impact gastroparesis, and it's really makes it really, really rough. So I got into Johns Hopkins. It was a long process because I had to go see doctors off base here. The doctor said pretty much the same thing as base doctors. Your conditions, we can't help you with them. You got to go somewhere else, which Johns Hopkins was my goal anyway. So I got a motility doctor at Johns Hopkins, and I got a new endocrinologist. The only issue was, it's kind of like Stanford. It takes months. So I finally got in October for both. So gastrology, motility doctor, she was first. And kind of where I am there is gave me a medicine to try. Unfortunately, like most of the medicines, it made me feel sicker, and so I'm not currently taking that medicine. My gastroparesis is manageable as far as I am still able to eat. I'm very limited, but I can eat. So where I'm at with that is she disagrees with the tubes. She said, my labs actually look really good. So my labs are holding, and as long as I'm able to eat and I'm able to stay out of the ER, which I do that by drinking a ton of water, because mainly my thing is I get dehydrated. Not so much now, but in the beginning I used to all the time. And then I drink Powerade Zero here and there when I feel like I need it, when I feel like I'm getting dehydrated. So no feeding tubes, and tried the medicine. Medicine made it worse, so that was a no-go. So kind of where I'm stuck at now is December I will go in for a full gut study. I already had the GES emptying study, which takes 5 hours. You eat some radioactive eggs, and it shows how slowly it goes down. Well, Johns Hopkins, they actually do a 4-day test, and it starts from the top, meaning your esophagus, and it goes up, and they monitor all the way down, all the way out through your colon, so they can see. They already know that my stomach's delayed from the gastroparesis and the nerve damage. So they want to make sure, they want to check and see if anything else is messed up as far as like my intestines, my colon, my esophagus, things like that. I don't expect my esophagus to come back with any issues, because I don't feel like, that everything up there works fine. It's mainly like what they told me at the bottom of my stomach. So that's kind of where I am with that. I have to do that testing. If I do that testing, and it just shows the stomach and not really any other issues, then I may be eligible for a stent. They would put a stent in at the bottom of my stomach. If it works, if it helps me be able to digest, faster, quicker, then I could go in for a G-POM. A G-POM is where they go in with an endoscope and they kind of cut it back. So that may be an option. My problem is gastroparesis and bariatric hypoglycemia are like your two worst enemies. So each each condition has things they can give you for treatment, but if you do the treatment, it can make the other condition worse. So they're really working together with my endocrinologist to see which is better. There's a lot of surgeries that have been offered that they won't do, like a pyeloplasty, stomach removal, just different things, because it would ultimately bring back the dumping syndrome, and God knows I don't want that back. That was worse than gastroparesis, for me anyway. So I'm not going to do those things, and I'm glad I hesitated and I didn't get them done, because they seem to make certain people worse. And as far as the bariatric hypoglycemia, the medicine that John Hopkins could offer me, again, I wasn't able to take it because it would slow my motility, and I already have that, so it would just make it worse. I'm keeping in contact with my Stanford doctor as well. I've talked on previous videos about the GLP-1 that they've been developing and working on for gastric bypass patients. That's an actual blocker. It's not FDA approved yet, but keeping in contact as far as when it is FDA, possibly getting my hands on trying that. And going back to a nutritionist to see if there's anything else that I can possibly add to my diet. Is pretty much going to stay the same, I think, because she's pretty happy that I'm being on top of my health and keeping my numbers under control. I'm still not back at work, so I've been out of work for over a year now. I've just been finishing school, almost done with my degree, and hoping, the doctor said try to go back to work. The issue is I work fast paced with children, so I got to really try to find something that's not going to run my blood sugar down constantly, and somewhere where I'm able to drink and eat every couple hours. So it makes it kind of complicated. I was tried to be put on disability, but that didn't work, so I got denied for that. So that's kind of where I am. I can definitely tell you I'm not any worse. I feel like every year since my reverse has gotten better. I feel like the second year, it was bumpy, rocky. Third year, I was under so much stress that I think it just made things worse. Fourth year, I feel like I'm coming into the fourth year. I've kind of came to the acceptance that these are things I'm going to have to live with. I feel very blessed on this day to be here, and I just do my best to try to help others. Anyway, so that's pretty much where I'm at. I don't go back until the end of December to do all my testing, and then I'll go back and see her, and we'll decide where to go from there. But, I do run a support group for people that's had gastric bypass with complications, people that are getting a reverse or takedown, or that have had one. And I do have my blog, but I get questions all the time and messages all the time from people all over. And so I kind of put a list together because I get the same questions over and over again. And I decided that I would take some time to answer them. So a big one that I always get from people is, how much weight did you get? To me, or how much weight did you gain? To me, that's like a really sad question to ask, because when I was getting ready to have my reverse, I was 116 pounds. My bones were sticking out. I was malnourished and I was dying, and I would have given anything to be back to 262 pounds, which to some people seems crazy because I know they had the surgery because it was about the weight. But for me, it was not about the weight. I was overweight, but guess what? I was healthy before I had gastric bypass. So for me, it's really hard to see why being overweight is worse than being healthy. To me, health is more important. It is not to me about how much weight I gain. So how much weight did you gain? I was 116 pounds at the day of my reverse. I was horribly malnourished, and I normally like to be around 140, 145. So I gained back pretty quickly. In the first year, I gained 20 pounds. Then with gastroparesis, I kind of go up and down on my weight. But over the 4 years, I'm sitting at 133. So I'm definitely not overweight. It's not to say that some people that don't have reverses gain weight. I do believe some of it is because, you know, people haven't ate for so long and they're able to eat. And if they don't have hypoglycemia and they don't use their tools that they were learned, they go back to just eating whatever they want. And that will cause you to gain weight. The other thing is our metabolisms seem to be all messed up. There's lots of studies out there that when you reroute the digestive tract, even the initial one, your metabolism gets all messed up. So some people barely even eat and they just put on weight. And it's because your metabolism is not running properly. So that can happen as well. So yeah, it wasn't, you know, I've been stable and I've been doing fine. I think a lot of that too is bariatrics. They put the scare in people. Oh, if I reverse you, you're going to get fat. So, I mean, that happened to me with mine. How long was my stay? So, typically, I know people's stay can be from 3 days and up. Mine was 1 day. My doctor was a little crazy. He's not a very good bedside manner, and I will say he's an excellent surgeon because I've had plenty of other doctors down inside of me that says that I am put back together like immaculate on the inside. He was a really good surgeon, but that's pretty much about it. And I was only there for 24 hours. I went in, I had my gastric bypass. I woke up, I felt amazing the first time in 6 months. My sugars were normal. I was up walking. I was drinking. My pain level was under control. So basically the next morning they took me down. They checked. There was no leaks. And he said, you're out of here. So for me, I could have probably used another night. I ended up going to a friend's house and staying in bed and being monitored because it was an 8-hour drive for us. So yeah, you probably shouldn't leave in 24 hours after this kind of surgery. Mine was laparoscopic, which is, you know, easier than being sliced completely across the stomach. But I still had 5 holes to add to all the other ones. Another question that I get, what do you eat? So when you're going to have a reverse, what do you eat after? There is no meal plan as far as I know because reverses are not done every single day. There was none for me. I basically was told, I'm putting you back together, eat whatever you want. I was like, you're crazy. So what I did is I just started out slow. I started with liquids. I pretty much noticed right away I was going to have issues because the liquid would come back up into my throat. I wouldn't throw it up, but it would just come up and sit there and burn. And so I moved on to softs about a week later, and then I went from there, and probably about a month later I was eating pretty stable on foods. I did better on salads than I did on liquids, and it slowly got better and better. But I just progressed, you know, slowly on what worked for me, and I think everybody's different, and that's what you have to do. Okay, so a lot of people want to know, is there insurance code for gastric bypass? No, there's not. So if you go in to have a doctor that says he's going to give you a reverse and you get denied by your insurance, it's because there is no code for reverse. So I can only tell you what my doctor's office did, and what they did is there's 2 different surgeries that they billed for. One was a code for stomach surgery, one was a code for intestines because, you know, they rerouted my intestines back. And that is what they used, and that is how mine got paid for. Another one I get all the time was it worth it? Yes. Yes, it was. Because I'm sitting here. Because I knew that I would die if I didn't have it, and I was told by a few doctors that refused to touch me, but I knew what was coming. Literally, like, I felt like I was leaving my body, and the light was coming. So, for me, it was worth it. I don't regret it. You know, like I say, this is a happy day for me. I regret the initial bypass. I don't really support it anymore. I see way too many people with complications that it just makes me so angry that they're even still doing the surgery. So yeah, for me the reverse was worth it. Are you better or are you worse? Well, I'm definitely better. I'm not worse. Before, I was a lot worse. I have gastroparesis now, which is not fun. It's a demon of its own. I have good days, I have bad days, I have days, weeks where I feel like I have the flu. But it is nothing compared to how bad the dumping was before the reverse. And you know, I don't have the anemia, and I have healthy labs, and so, you know, for me, yeah, the bariatric hypoglycemia would have probably, it would have been there regardless because it was caused from the gastric bypass. It's not caused from the reverse. They say with the reverse, one surgeon told me, one chief surgeon at UC Davis told me, and he was the only doctor that ever told me this, and this was after my reverse. There's a 10% risk, is what he told me. My original surgeon did not tell me that, but I don't think he knew because I was his first reverse. So 10% chance that you will get gastroparesis. Some things that weigh into that are how long between time that you've had your initial and you've been put back together, because the longer your stomach sits there, they say the longer, you know, the nerve, you know, it just doesn't work the way it used to. But I think it's more the nerve damage thing. You know, they cut that vagus nerve, and once that's damaged, your stomach, it just doesn't pump like it's supposed to. So I'm definitely better. You know, I understand some of the people in our group are having a really hard time after their reverses, and I can see that because it takes a long time for your body to try to find some rhythm. I mean, I'm seeing that 4 years out. So I think it's like looking for a little bit of positive, even when you're having those horrible days, can really help. People always ask me who my doctor was. So my doctor actually was the doctor that did my initial bypass, is the doctor that did my reverse. His name is Dr. Milton Owens. He may be retired now. I'm not sure. He's in Southern California. And he's done, I know, well into 10,000 surgeries. So I had no issue letting him perform the reverse, even though I was his first. I was very comfortable with him as far as surgically putting me back together, which he did. So that was where my doctor was. I know when people are looking for doctors, it can be really hard. A lot of doctors, they either don't take care of their patients anymore when they start having complications because they don't know how to fix them, or they refuse to do a reverse. Some tell them it's not possible when it is. My bariatric said right out, if we're good bariatric doctors and we can take you apart, we should be able to put you back together. And if your doctor is not willing to do that, I wouldn't even let them try, to be honest. Look for somebody else. You know, for me, I just had to keep calling around, and then finally I said, screw it. We're gonna drive 8 hours. I'm going back to my original, and he did this, so he's gonna fix it. You know, so that's what we did. Yeah, so those are like the questions that I get all the time. So basically all I'm doing is I'm still running the support group on Facebook. It's called Gastric Bypass Takedown and Reverse Support. So if you are having complications, if you are getting ready to have a reverse, or you're thinking about a reverse, or, you know, I do try to put information up there on different conditions like the bariatric hypoglycemia, like the gastroparesis, other things that affect you, which is pretty much everything and anything with gastric bypass, it seems like, can cause either hernias. You know, I'm always researching and looking for new things to share with the group, and I always try to reply because I know how it feels to not have support, and that's what this group is for. So I have that group that you guys can join, and I also have my blog, In the Life of My Franking Belly, at wordpress.com. And I haven't wrote on it in a long time. I think I have maybe once since I've been here. But when I get a chance, I'm going to sit down and do a little 4-year thing for my blog as well. So that's where I currently am. I'm, for the most part, I would say, pretty stable. You know, I really, like I said, I just have came to accept what is, and they aren't going away, and maybe I can get some help, and maybe I can't. And that's kind of where the doctors are now. They're trying to figure out if there is, but one thing I know is I will live with these. And, you know, like I said, today's a good day. So I think I kept you all long enough, but that's where I am. 4 years out, gastric bypass. All right, see you guys. Bye.